Give me 7 days, just 7, and we will watch together as the storm loses its voice. Not 7 days to make a better you, not 7 days to arm wrestle life, not 7 days to gather new words with which to shout at the sky. 7 days to return, 7 days to rest, 7 days to sit, to stand inwardly still and consent to the presence already at the center of your being. This is a sacred experiment, not of self-improvement, but of homecoming. The heart returning to its own sanctuary. You know the problem you can't fix. I do not need the details. It is that unmovable thing, that recurring fear, that relationship whose edges cut, that body that will not obey, that money that will not stretch, that regret that will not sleep, this storm, this sin, this disease, this lack. And the world, if you read through the eyes of the world, urges you to do something, anything, to appease it, fix it, fight it, out-argue it, out-hustle it. But hear me, the 7 days are not for fixing the problem. The 7 days are for finding the stillness in which the problem loses authority. Do not make the mistake, ever, of calling noise prayer. Prayer is not words sent upward, not persuasion applied to a reluctant deity, not spiritual leverage to move a stubborn universe. Prayer is consent. Prayer is yielding. Prayer is the heart standing still until the divine presence announces itself as the very life at the center of you. The Christ isn't a man or a woman. The Christ is a divine state of consciousness, impersonal, universal. And the moment you consent to that, just consent, the storm cannot speak with the same authority. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord. Now I must speak a paradox to you. Nothing changes by personal effort. The harder you strain, the tighter the knot. Yet everything changes as you relax from effort into spiritual awareness. No one receives this by their own effort, and yet no one receives it without the holy labor of becoming still, of laying down the sword of personal will, of entering the inner sanctuary even when the wind howls outside. That is the effort that is not effort. For 7 days we will return by the same doorway, not inventing new entrances, not chasing new techniques. The same chair if you can, the same hour if you can. The same simple consent, always deeper. Here I am. Each day the practice is the same, but the depth is not. We do not make progress by noise. We discover depth by quiet. To keep faith with the experiment, attend to one sentence each day. Name the temptation and name your turning. Write it, whisper it, share it if you must. Today the storm said, and I returned to. That is all. Refusal to wrestle. Consent to presence. 7 days. And listen, listen. Watch how the storm loses its voice. Do not pray through the eyes of the world. If you read your life by material sense, you will misread everything and anoint your misreading with the word reality. The world's eyes measure by timelines and thermometers, by bank ledgers and headlines, by what 5 senses shout in unison. And then, then it kneels to what it just measured and calls that kneeling prayer. That is not prayer. That is fear in religious clothing. That is reaction crowned with piety. Let us be very clear. What we call appearances are not decrees. Appearances are reports. Hypnotic reports. Loud reports, yes, insistent, urgent, persuasive reports that march across the mind with charts and arguments and memories. But a report is not a verdict, and a verdict is not God. Fear is born the very moment you take the report of material sense and stamp it with divine authority. In that moment, you feed the storm with your belief. You lend it your life substance. You say to the wind and the wave, "You may govern me." And then, naturally, you panic, you strategize, you rehearse outcomes. You try to pray and only find more words to say to the wind. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord. Not stand still in resignation. Not fold your hands and surrender the field to chance. Not wait while secretly calculating a dozen exits. Stand still in spiritual government. To stand still here is to withdraw the consent that empowers appearances, to bring consciousness under the government of the presence, to cease from personal warfare and let the law of spirit announce itself. There is a stillness which is not escape. It is authority. There is a silence which is not passivity. It is dominion. Two souls face the same storm. One prays through the eyes of the world and becomes a strategist of anxiety. Phone calls, bargains, frantic research, the tightening of jaw and chest, the pleading for a tomorrow different from today. The other, seeing the very same waves, retires to the inner sanctuary, not to delay action, but to purify consciousness. The breath softens. The heart consents. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. The circumstance may not alter in that minute, but the seat of government has changed. And where the Spirit governs, the storm loses borrowed authority. The hypnotic report loses its voice. For our work together, let this be our operational definition. True prayer is not reaction. True prayer is recognition. Recognition of what? Of the impersonal Christ as the only life at the center of you, the only law, the only cause. It is the turning of attention from pictures to presence, from effects to principle, from noise to the inner sanctuary. The very moment you stop reading the situation through the world's eyes, in that moment, you stop feeding the storm with your belief. You have not denied it. You have denied it power. And as you abide there, quiet, consenting, governed, grace begins to do what effort cannot. It governs consciousness, and governed consciousness governs experience. Stand ye still and watch the verdict change. Now, before we go one step farther, let me say what must be said. Do not make the mistake, ever, of being satisfied with a statement of truth. Do not congratulate yourself on a beautiful affirmation, a noble phrase, a fine sentiment that glitters up here in the head while the heart still trembles. The letter of truth, the letter without spirit is a shell. There must come to you and to me an actual conviction, not a sentence we can recite, but a presence that bears witness within. When conviction dawns, the atmosphere changes. The very room changes. The breath eases. Not because the clock moved or the ledger balanced, but because peace took its rightful throne. True prayer is not words. True prayer is not pleading. True prayer is not outlining to the infinite how the infinite should behave. True prayer is not a shopping list, not a bargain, not a schedule we hand to God. True prayer is not an attempt to bend law. True prayer is the recognition that law already is. True prayer is not reaction to pictures. True prayer is awareness of presence. True prayer is consciousness yielding until the soul can whisper without sound, "Here I am," and feel that the I which answers is not the personal I at all, but the I that was before Abraham was. When prayer descends from phrase to presence, then peace ceases to be a concept and becomes your climate. Now the question arises, and rightly, how do we work? And the answer is the paradox we must learn to love. No one can receive this by personal effort, and yet not one of us receives it without a holy labor. The labor is not to manufacture outcomes. The labor is to relax from manufacturing. The work is the ceasing of work. We retire from the mind that outlines, from the will that pushes, from the imagination that rehearses disaster, and we let the Father within do the works. We do not script God, we consent to God. We do not hold the world on our shoulders, we let the government be upon His shoulder. And this clarifies the aim of our 7 days. We are not obtaining an event, we are receiving an impartation. The proof we seek is not a changed picture first. The proof we seek is peace. Peace that becomes authority, not anesthesia. Peace that stands up inside you and says without argument, "It is well." When that peace takes root, you will find that the so-called problem is still there, perhaps, but no longer your master. Grace has touched consciousness, and governed consciousness will in due time govern experience. Let us be exquisitely simple now. Your daily structure is this: pause, consent, listen, rest. Pause, step back from the world's eyes, set down the phone, the article, the memory. Withdraw the attention that feeds the storm. Consent, say within, "Here I am," and mean, "I release personal authorship. I allow spirit to govern." Listen, and the listening is not to thoughts, not to sentences chattering. It is to the quiet beneath thought, the still small hush in which you sense, rather than hear, a presence living you. Rest. Abide there. 2 minutes or 20. Be unhurried. When you rise, refuse to pick the problem back up. Walk softly in the after silence. Do this, and peace will cease being a theory and become the law under which you live. And in that law, the storm cannot keep its borrowed voice. Day 1 is a holy refusal. Today we do not wrestle the condition. We withdraw from it. Not in cowardice, not in delay, but in reverence. The first victory is not the changing of the circumstance. The first victory is the refusal to give the circumstance your consciousness. I can of mine own self do nothing. Hear that, not as helplessness, but as the end of the ego trying to be savior. The ego is not called to redeem, to explain, to arrange. The Father within doeth the works. Our part, yours and mine, is to cease from the inward fight, to retire to the inner sanctuary, to let the government rest upon His shoulder. Stand ye still and see. Now the practice. Sit, right where you are, or in that chair you will keep for these days. Hands open, shoulders easy. Let the breath come and go as if the sea were breathing you. On the next out-breath, say within, "Here I am." Do nothing with the syllables. Let them settle like a feather on still water. Then allow the problem to present its mask. Let it walk in, if it insists, with its figures and forecasts, its pictures, its urgency. Do not push it away, and do not invite it closer. Let it stand at the threshold. And now, decline to engage. Not a thought fight, not an argument, not a rebuttal. Just the quiet, wordless stance. I see you as a report. I do not bestow authority. The Christ within is law here. Return to the breath. Feel the weight of the chair beneath you. Let the stillness take responsibility for what you have ceased to carry. 2 minutes, 5, 10. Time does not certify presence. Consent does.
Someone says, but isn't that avoidance? No. Avoidance is running from pictures while secretly believing them. This is different. This is going straight to the root. The only power an appearance seems to have is the power you and I lend it by consenting to it as law. Today we withdraw that consent. We are not refusing action. We are refusing hypnotism. We are not denying the picture. We are denying it authority. The wind can howl around a ship that has lowered its sails. It cannot drive it. So we lower the sails of attention. We confront precisely where the storm borrows its voice, within our own belief, and we retire belief from the case. The battle is not yours, but God's. In that stillness, jurisdiction changes. Carry this refusal gently through the day. When the mind reaches to pick up the package again, set it down unopened. Whisper, if you must, I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. Then pause, breathe, listen, rest. Step out of the room of arguments and back into the sanctuary for 1 quiet minute, many times if needed. This is not indifference. This is devotion to right government. And when you lay your head tonight, let your last conscious act be surrender. Here I am. Your day 1 record is simple. Today I stopped fighting, and I stood still long enough to feel. Fill it in truthfully. The storm may still prattle. You need not furnish it a pulpit. Day 2 is entrance. Yesterday we stood at the threshold and refused the wrestling match. Today we step inside the inner sanctuary and let the door be gently, reverently shut. I am not speaking of a place in time, nor a corner of the room merely. I am speaking of that holy center within you where the Christ is already law, where the presence is already government. Picture, if you must, a quiet chamber, a holy of holies, curtained from the marketplace by a veil of silence. Outside, the wind can mutter, the rain can slap the eaves, the messengers can pound the gate with urgent papers. But hear this: they cannot enter unless you open. The latch is on the inside. The storm has no key but your attention. The practical obstacle appears right away. The mind will say, just one more thought. Make the call first. Work through the scenario. If you don't solve it now, it will be worse later. Excuse me. That is fear's logic speaking in the accent of responsibility. Do not scold it. Do not argue with it. Recognize it for what it is, an invitation to step back out into the wind and let the storm borrow your voice. True responsibility, this morning and this evening, is to keep the seat in the sanctuary until governance changes hands, until you can feel, not think, that the Father within doeth the works. Waiting out the storm is not delay. It is not dismissing life. It is resting in God activity while appearances spend their noise outside. Waves will come, tremors in the chest, a heat in the face, a sudden ache of tears. Let them roll and pass like weather. Do not name them truth. Do not build a theology around a ripple. The Christ within does not tremble. The Christ within is your calm. Stand ye still and see. If you need a word, take but one, and lightly. Thy grace is sufficient. Say it once as a bow,
not as a battering ram. Then return to the hush. The phrase is a finger pointing. Do not mistake the finger for the sky. Let the silence be the prayer, the consent, the government. Your practice for day 2 is wonderfully simple. 2 sessions, morning and evening. Same chair if you can. Begin with, "Here I am." Offer the one phrase if needed, "Thy grace is sufficient," and then withdraw even from words. 10 minutes, or 5, or 20. Let the clock be servant, not master. Do not measure by outcomes. Measure by the softening of compulsion. Are you less hurried to fix? Does the hand on the doorknob loosen? That is grace touching consciousness. Carry the sanctuary with you between sessions. When the world knocks, text, headline, memory, pause and feel for the inner door. Keep it closed until you can open from peace, not panic. You will find, as you abide, that the storm is still the storm, yet it speaks more softly. It has lost its pulpit. Why? Because you have ceased to lend it yours. And in that holy quiet, the government rests where it belongs. The battle is not yours, but God's. Day 3 asks something simple and, to the personal self, impossible. We separate the impersonal Christ from the personal self who panics. Hear it clearly. The Christ isn't a man or a woman. The Christ is a divine state of consciousness, impersonal, universal, present in some degree as every man and every woman. It is the presence that was before you had a name, and will be when names are dust. It is the light by which you notice thoughts, the life by which you breathe, the law by which harmony is harmony. If you read through the eyes of the world, you will imagine a deity outside and a frightened mortal inside, pleading across a distance. If you read by spiritual sense, you will find that the only distance is an illusion of the very self that trembles. Now, let us expose the trap. The personal self wants to pray for its future. Preserve my status, protect my plan, increase my supply, fix my body, vindicate my story. It wishes to hire God as a consultant to secure its continuance. It prays as a beggar and keeps its crown. And then, then it wonders why there is no authority in its words. The more personal the prayer, the thinner its power. It is the echo of fear asking fear to comfort it. Do not make that mistake. The Christ is not interested in improving a frightened image. The Christ is the dawning of a different government altogether. What then is the pivot? Prayer is not, "God help me," shouted across the storm. Prayer is recognition. Christ is the life of my life. Presence is the doer. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. Do you feel the government change in that? The personal self, with its anxious timelines, steps down. The impersonal presence, unruffled, constructive, quietly assumes its rightful office. No one need fear the Christ. The Christ is not a destroyer of persons. The Christ dissolves the personal sense that suffers. The Christ does not break lives. It breaks the hypnosis that makes life appear broken. It is of a constructive nature. It restores, harmonizes, illumines. Fear belongs to shadows. Christ belongs to light. Our practice today is the simplest and the most revolutionary. Each time panic stirs, tightness in the throat, a flood of images, the impulse to rush, pause and ask, silently, who is aware of this? Do not answer with a biography. Do not recite a name. Do not chase the content of panic. Turn to the awareness itself. What is this that knows the flutter in the chest? What is this that notices the thought, I am afraid? Rest there. That awareness is not trembling. That awareness is not threatened by the picture it beholds. That awareness is the door of the inner sanctuary. Through it, the Christ announces itself. Repeat as often as panic requests your audience. Who is aware of this? Then stand a breath's length behind the scene as the witness, not the actor. In that impersonal place, say softly, "Here I am." Do not attempt to manage the waves. Abide as the ocean that contains them. You will discover that the more impersonal your prayer becomes, the more power it has, because it is no longer the ego speaking. It is presence consenting to itself. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Actions may be taken later, yes, but they will issue from peace, not from fear. Let this be your day 3. Whenever panic rises, retire one step inward to the aware presence and let it govern. The battle is not yours, but God's. Day 4 is reframe and release. The battle is not yours, but God's. Hear it, not as a slogan, but as a transfer of jurisdiction out of mental combat. The battle is not fought in spreadsheets of worry, not waged in midnight rehearsals, not won by arranging outcomes. The battle is not yours, because there is no saving power in your fear, no law in your argument, no Christ in your resistance. The battle is God's, because governance belongs to presence, and presence requires stillness, not struggle. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord. What then makes the problem roar? We do. We rehearse it, we forecast it, we defend against it, we edit new scenes for it and screen them privately, like a disaster film with endless sequels. We confer titles upon it, inevitable, external, stronger than me, and then we bow to the title we wrote. This is how appearances gain momentum, not by divine decree, but by the attention we lavish on them, the power we attribute to them, the stories we paste onto them. Appearances do not have power. They borrow power from the attention you give them. Let us be very clear. The problem you can't fix is not a deity with a scepter. It is a storm image within consciousness, loud, convincing, cinematic, yes, but without law behind it. Law abides in spirit. Law flows as grace, as order, as the quiet rhythm of the Father within doing the works. The image has sound, it has no substance. It can spray the windows, it cannot enter the sanctuary unless you open. And, excuse me, we often open by fascination, by staring, by narrating, by fighting what we just endowed with throne and crown. So today we practice a holy reframe. In the very minute where momentum gathers. Notice the trigger, an email sharp with implication, a tone in a voice that stings, a headline dressed for panic, a memory with claws. Notice. Pause. Do not follow. Do not fix. Inwardly say, once, lightly, not power. Not an argument, not a debate with the picture. Just the withdrawal of your consent. Then return to quiet. 1 breath, 2, and the soft recognition, here I am. Let the wave pass without mounting it. Let the report speak without appointing it judge. You will be tempted to repeat, not power, as if it were a spell. Don't. Say it once as a deed of government, then abide. The point is not to batter the mind with words. The point is to refuse the loan of your authority. If the wave rises again, you may notice, pause, and again say, "Not power," and again return. Always the motion is the same, from picture to presence, from effect to principle, from noise to the inner sanctuary. The battle is not yours.
Make day 4 ordinary on purpose. In emails, in conversations, in the spaces between tasks, in the news you cannot help but see, this is where false authority feeds. This is where you refrain from feeding it. Your record tonight may read simply, "At the subject line that hooked me, not power. At the glance that pricked me, not power. At the headline that shouted, not power." And I returned to quiet. You will notice that actions taken from that quiet are clean, brief, sufficient. The storm may continue to narrate. It narrates less to you. Why? Because you have ceased to be its publisher. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Keep your attention with spirit, and appearances will find no desk from which to print their decrees. Day 5 is the hush after the refusal, the quiet in which grace finds an open door. Yesterday you retired your consent from appearances. Today you will notice what enters when the room is no longer occupied by argument. Grace touches the soul, not because we have earned, argued, or engineered it, but because we have become still enough to stop interrupting it. The storm may still gesture at the window. Inside, something softer begins to govern. The invisible change comes first, and that is not a delay. That is the order of heaven. Let us be exact. Grace is not a mood we manufacture. Grace is not a stimulus we inject into the mind. Grace is the activity of God felt in consciousness when personal pressure subsides. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord. When we cease pushing outlines across the altar, when, we stop educating God with our schedules, grace does what only grace can. It changes the governor within, and a different law begins to operate. Often, at first, nothing happens on the surface. Emails still arrive, bills still stand in a row. The body may not instantly sing a different song, but inwardly, mark it. The climate shifts. Fear loosens one finger from your throat. Resentment softens at the edges. The compulsion to check, to fix, to explain, weakens. The jaw unthreads. The shoulders lower without order. The old story tries to rehearse itself and cannot find its full cast. A quiet appears that you did not invent, and it lingers a minute longer than it used to. This is the invisible change. This is how souls evolve. This is how the world evolves, by increasing sensitivity to spirit. You cannot always see spiritual evolution in fireworks. You see it in recoil at cruelty, in a widening circle of care. There was a time when bondage was law. Grace worked until hearts could no longer bear it. There was a time when devastation was paraded as triumph. Grace worked until the very thought of it drew horror and humble apology. Even commerce, which once boasted of appetite, finds itself borrowing the language of responsibility. Why? Because grace touches consciousness first, and consciousness, in due time, reforms its institutions and its pictures. So today, watch for the subtleties. You speak in a calmer tone without deciding to. You wait one beat before replying, and in that beat, a better word finds you. The phone vibrates and, astonishingly, it can vibrate without owning you. An old injury knocks, and you find, not a door, but a window opening to forgiveness, unargued, unforced.
A quiet confidence rises that did not come from a spreadsheet. It came, as ever, from presence assuming office. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, and liberty is first felt as release within. Your practice is simple and exacting. Attend to the inner evidences and let them be enough for today. Tonight, write one paragraph beginning, "Grace today appeared as," and complete it with what you actually lived. As a softening toward her name. As patience on hold. As laughter returning after months. As silence that did not frighten me. As the absence of that old rush. Do not count dollars or weigh outcomes. Count the peace that stood where panic used to stand. Grace changes consciousness first, and when consciousness changes, the world's picture must eventually follow. The battle is not yours, but God's. Stand still and let the government remain upon His shoulder. Day 6 asks for something beautiful and simple. Homage. Not performance. Homage. Not to a person, not to an idea, not to a memory of a teacher, but to the impersonal Christ that has been stirring these last days like a newborn light in the manger of your own heart. Think again of the story we've all been told until it dulled on the tongue, the wise men coming with gifts. If you read through the eyes of the world, you will see exotic travelers charmed by a baby. But the illumined see differently. No one travels that far for a baby as baby. The draw was not a personality. The draw was principle. It wasn't the infant itself. It was the Christ which that infant embodied, represented. The homage was not to the person, for the person had no crown yet. The homage was to the office of Christhood, to the divine state of consciousness dawning in visibility. They laid gifts at the feet of the principle, not the personality. Why is this important now? Because something like that has begun in you. You may not trumpet it. You may barely admit it. But the inner climate has changed. And when Christ begins to have reality, not merely vocabulary, the heart inevitably asks to bow. Some sign, some symbol must come. Not as superstition, not as payment, not as a bargain, but as the dictate of the heart saying, "I recognize the holy." The sign does not create the birth, it reveals it. The gift does not purchase grace, it acknowledges governance has changed hands. Excuse me, do not make the mistake of imagining God is flattered by props and ceremonies. No, the only thing that touches the divine is the surrender of personal will. The outer gesture is meaningful only as the transparent body of that inner bending of the knee. So what might it look like, this clean, voluntary devotion? Light a candle and say nothing, letting the flame speak your consent to be governed. Place a flower on a windowsill with the inward word, "Here I am." Kneel in gratitude in a quiet room where no eye but the invisible witnesses you. Write a letter of forgiveness you never send, then fold it and place it beneath a stone, not to bury the past, but to free your heart's hands. Give quietly, anonymously if you can, to a place where the Christ idea is alive, not because it needs your coin, but because your soul needs to agree with its own recognition. Remove your shoes in your own home and sit on the floor, as if the ground had become holy because it always was. Take off your hat to no one in particular, because you suddenly know this air is sacred. Each of these is nothing. Each of these is everything, if it rises, uncoerced, from the heart's devotion. Let me warn, lovingly, against the counterfeit. Devotion is not a trade. Devotion is not a bargain. If you fix this, I will give that. Devotion is not theater. No posting, no announcing, no inner applause. Devotion is acknowledgement. Devotion is surrender. Devotion is the personal self stepping aside that the Father within may do the works. The Christ is not a tyrant to be appeased. No one need fear the Christ. The Christ is of a constructive nature. It dissolves the personal sense that suffers and sets consciousness under spiritual law. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Your Day 6 assignment is beautifully brief and exact. Choose one act of homage and perform it privately today. Do not consult anyone. Do not refine it till it sparkles. Let it be what your heart, this very hour, is moved to offer. Then, this is crucial, sit in stillness afterward. 2 minutes, 5, 10. Here I am. Say nothing more. Do not measure your act. Do not listen for a reply. Let the act itself seal the recognition it expressed, as wax seals a letter that was already written. You will find that in the quiet following devotion, peace takes on weight. The inward bow becomes an inward throne, and you will know, without argument and without proof, Christ is becoming real in experience, not theory. Stand ye still. The battle is not yours, but God's. Let homage be your amen. Day 7 opens, as truth often does, with a paradox. The condition may stand there on the desk as before. The figure may not have moved. The body may still report its old language. Yet, listen. The inner tyranny can be broken, and that is the beginning of dominion. The storm can still circle the house while, within, the lamp burns untroubled. The miracle is not that life never storms. The miracle is that the storm no longer has your consent. What, then, is the real outcome of these 7 days? Tranquility that does not lean on outcomes. A baseline of spiritual perception stronger than habit, deeper than argument, gentler than force. You have learned to refuse the loan of your authority, to abide in the inner sanctuary, to recognize the impersonal Christ as the true governor of consciousness. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And liberty felt first as inward poise becomes, in time, liberty in the picture. Watch what happens does not mean scan the horizon like a sentry, measuring clouds. Watching, in the Spirit, is beholding from stillness. It is letting grace show its own handiwork in its own hour. It is a readiness without reach, a listening without strain. Decisions today will come gently, like a leaf that finds your open palm. If no decision arrives, do not whip the waters. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord. Excuse me. Do not make the mistake of demanding a sign on your clock. That is the personal self bargaining again. We are not proving God to the mind. We are consenting to God as mind. How do you watch? You sit as you have learned, and you live from that seat. You move through your tasks without surrendering your seat. Let the email arrive. Let the voice rise. Let the memory knock. You answer only from the quiet. If an action is given, it will be clean, brief, sufficient. If silence is given, silence is fidelity. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. Let this be the law of your watching. And now, bear witness, for the sake of the community that grows around truth. Offer, simply, what changed within you, what softened, what released, what insight arrived. where panic used to sit and now peace has taken the chair. And if some outward shift followed, an eased conversation, a provision without push, a body's sigh of relief, name it humbly as the fruit of an inward change, not as a prize taken by effort. Your quiet testimony helps another lay down their arms. We close today without closing the practice. The 7 days were never a fence. They were a gate. Continue. Return and return again to the inner sanctuary. Keep refusing to grant power to appearances. Keep letting grace govern consciousness. Let the experiment become a life. Not technique, but trust. Not compulsion, but consent. The storm may speak. It has lost your pulpit. The government is upon his shoulder. The battle is not yours, but God's. Stand ye still and watch.
After 7 days, a new temptation stands at the door, and it is polite. It quotes scripture and smiles. It says, "Keep doing exactly what you did, exactly this long, exactly this way, and outcomes will obey." Excuse me, that is the personal self sneaking back in with a stopwatch and a lever. Do not turn stillness into a tool. Do not make "here I am" a charm to shake coins from heaven. Do not convert sanctuary into a workshop. The moment you use quiet to move pictures, you have left quiet and returned to management. Do not seek a method. Seek the consciousness that makes methods unnecessary. When consciousness is under grace, pictures find their place in season. When consciousness is under you, strain resumes its government. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. Keep the government where it belongs. Now, a rhythm, not a regimen. Each day, 3 pauses of reverence. Upon waking, at midday, and before sleep. 2 or 3 minutes will do. Hands easy. Here I am. Nothing more is needed, and nothing forced is allowed. Once each week, keep a longer hour, 30 or 60 minutes in the inner sanctuary. Not to accumulate merit, but to remember who is Lord. And whenever a trigger knocks, tone, headline, memory, withdraw at once, even for 1 breath, to the seat you have learned. Do not answer the world from the hall. Answer from the Holy of Holies. This is not technique. This is fidelity. Discernment will keep you honest. Action that belongs to spirit arrives with peace, clean, brief, sufficient. It does not argue for itself. It does not hurry you past your own heart. Its timing is unhurried, even when swiftness is required. Panic-driven action has a taste, metallic, urgent, self-justifying. It brings strain in its wake and demands witnesses to prove it was wise. Choose only the peace-led step. If you must convince yourself twice, wait. If you can proceed without rehearsing defenses, proceed. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, and liberty is recognized by the absence of compulsion. Let this identity be settled. You are not a problem solver trying to reach God. You are a transparency through which the presence governs. The office, not the personality, holds the power. The Christ is not a man or woman. The Christ is a divine state of consciousness. And as you yield, it lives your life as order, as kindness, as sufficiency. No one need fear the Christ. The Christ is of a constructive nature. It dissolves the personal sense that suffers and installs the quiet rule of grace. We end as we began, inwardly, gratefully. Thank you for consenting to stillness,
for refusing the loan of your authority to appearances, for letting grace have its day in you. Stand ye still, and see the salvation of the Lord. Take your pauses, keep your hour. When the knock comes, return at once to the sanctuary. Live so that method fades and presence remains. Go in peace. The battle is not yours, but God's.